In this senior design midterm presentation for petroleum engineering students at Louisiana State University, Sawyer Scott, Austin Yeager, Daniel Murphy, and Laila Haddaq, being advised by Dr. Wesley Williams in Group 4, set out to explore many different complexities and strategies of producing in Antelope Creek, North Dakota. Up until this point in December of 2017, as you'll see throughout this presentation, our fall semester has been very busy, dedicated to preparing for the project and simulations without having done such simulations yet. Outlined further in this presentation are the contributions from each member. Sawyer, Austin, Laila, and Daniel have each devoted time to increasing our individual understanding of the Bakken play and of Antelope Creek and all other applicable concepts and data. Further, it has been each person's responsibility to collect data and establish connections with those in the field to collect data and to establish contacts with those that can allow us to access this data, not normally accessible to the public, as we have done with our geology professional from 9 Point Energy. Next semester, while working together in the team, they will teach each other how to execute CMG and become fluent in the software, as well as running enhanced oil recovery scenarios through the formation data as we have collected so far. About the authors. These 4 students each come from different backgrounds and each have their own unique interests and passions, from traveling around to high adventure sports. In terms of group participation up until this point halfway through the semester, Sawyer has done research on the lithologies in the Bakken play to gain an advanced understanding of the formation, to understand and predict any unexpected data once production data and geological data has been acquired. Laila has done extensive research on EORs. Her research is to gain an early and wide understanding of a wide variety of EORs to help the group eventually decide on what EOR would like to pursue. Drew has contacted the senior geologist of the company that has devoted a vast majority of wells in Antelope Field. Thanks to Drew, we have valuable contact with the exploration company to collect production data and subsurface geology data. Daniel Murphy compiled this team together and to start conducting research into the Bakken play and specifically Antelope Creek, North Dakota. With a strong background in subsurface geology, he is researching field development strategies, potential drilling zones, and production data analysis of our region in North Dakota. The project goals of this group presentation and throughout next semester will be to include comparing production data methods throughout Antelope Creek Field and analyzing and specifically focusing on primary production, water flooding, miscible gas flooding, vertical drilling, horizontal drilling, and well fracturing. First and foremost, an understanding of the lithology of the Bakken play is vital to physically producing from the formation. Logically, we cannot treat the Bakken as a traditional sandstone formation that we have become acquainted with as LSU petroleum engineering students. The Bakken play is an ultra-tight sand reservoir with exceptionally low recovery factor, which presents an interesting challenge when producing from said formations. This rock, as you can see from the picture, is about 200,000 square miles from the subsurface of the Williston Basin, underlying parts of Montana, Dakota, and Manitoba. Besides the Bakken Formation being a widespread prolific source rock for oil when thermally mature, a significant producible oil reserves exist within the rock itself. Oil was first discovered in the Bakken in 1951, but past efforts to produce it have faced technical difficulties. In these 2 graphs, we can see how productive the oil and gas industry has been in North Dakota, especially in recent years because of the shale revolution taking place. More to follow on that. From our literature review, we see lithological limitations that would usually suggest a low production yields, but the Bakken still has a uniquely high oil in place due to the incredible saturation and the limited pore space. In doing further research, it revealed effectively that the lithological properties and challenges that make the Bakken an exciting challenge to produce in years outside of the typical concepts learned in our petroleum engineering curriculum. From our literature review, the Bakken is not a uniform formation, meaning that throughout the formation, lithologies change and result in a wide range of production. His journal explains how the changes in lithology result in this change in production rates throughout the formation and minimize geological and technological risks. Despite advances in technology, many older wells outproduce newer wells, suggesting that production in the Bakken leans more toward geological impacts than technological. Factors influencing this variance include reservoir quality and thickness, overall structural and stratigraphic framework, rock mechanical properties, natural fractures, pour over pressures, and organic geochemical perimeters. This article explains how each of these factors exists in the Bakken Formation, and we'll be able to see that throughout this presentation and throughout research next semester, how they vary in the formation and how they affect the technological and production perimeters. Understanding variance in production throughout formations could help us understand production data acquired, especially if there is an unexpected rise or decline in productivity. Further, we've identified different tools for an increased understanding of the Bakken Formation. Hydraulic fracturing. According to the Geological Society of America, hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking, is a technique used to stimulate production of oil and gas after a well has been drilled. It consists of injecting a mixture of water, sand, and chemical additives through a well drilled into an oil or gas bearing rock, formed under high but controlled pressures. The small process is designed to create a small cracks in the formation and to propagate these fractures to a desired distance from the well bore by controlling the rate, pressure, and timing of a fluid injection. So much of our project will be exploring the difficulties of producing petroleum from the Bakken Formation in North Dakota. Until recent years, the formation has been relatively untouched due to its low permeability, low porosity, and geology. Recent hydraulic fracturing innovations and study into various EOR techniques have made drilling within the Bakken Formation profitable. Group 4 will be researching how various techniques influence productivity of the wells and their final effects on profitability. Fracture hits in the Bakken. Field development planning has played a major role in evaluating major development options over the past few years, taking into consideration some factors such as net present value, oil gas recovery, and operational flexibility and scalability. According to Miller, and through our research, development planning has played such a significant role in not only maximizing infill well potential, but also for protecting the economic interests of our pre-existing well. As petroleum engineers, although we are concerned with maximizing our new wells' production, it is important to protect our existing wells. Infill wells, when damaged from either hydraulic fracturing, as we learned earlier, or any other unforeseeable circumstances, can affect not only the production potential of a region, but also affect the first wells drilled on a particular lease called parent wells. The Bakken region has more positive fracture hits than any other regions. Through the graph, we can see that. As we progress along our senior design project, we will be able to learn about some of the benefits of single well refracturing versus parent well refracturing, and how these methods pertain to Antelope Creek Field in the Bakken. Potential drilling zones can be based off of the stratigraphic model's sweet spot distribution and oil production bubble graphs, and can be established once an average oil production and potential hydrocarbon content in the region is known. Throughout the course of this assignment, we should be able to analyze the sweet spot determination too for our Antelope Creek Field and reduce the uncertainty of our production forecast. By using analytical tools, engineers, as we'll see, will have a greater ability in diagnosing natural fractures, quantifying stimulated reservoir volume, and assessing the reliability of future performance predictions. Understanding these various approaches will help us estimate the EUR forecast for both the short-term and long-term production for our Antelope Creek in North Dakota. Displayed on the screen are two new enhanced oil recovery methods. Furthermore, our team has been looking for the low-cost enhanced oil recovery. It can be used because we are facing a tight budget and challenging market to make our energy resources more beneficial. Based on our research, we've understood a better understanding of the threat facing production rate in North Dakota and its economic run. Our field requires expensive maintenance and technologies due to the unconventional formations and the low oil prices. It was concluded from the research paper and through our research and the lit review that the drilling has been postponed for a time until the market gets better, which causes the half-life of the reservoir to decrease up into the average of 3.3 years. The average is too low compared to the conventional fields such as Saudi Arabia that have way larger numbers. We have learned from this research that how to forecast a production rate with uncertainty using BZ, a method to estimate oil and gas volumes based on the historic monthly volumes and gives results in the form of percentile. Unfortunately, the result for North Dakota fields is a short-term game, and it is highly suggested to postpone the drill until the drilling gets better. So at the beginning of the stages of our project, we found that we faced limited data in our original field that we were assigned, just Antelope, North Dakota. To begin with the project, we began learning about Antelope Field, a similar field to our current Antelope Creek field. Antelope Field, despite its similarities, yielded a very little production in lithological data as it began production and exploration operations in 1920. Obviously, record-keeping procedures in the 1920s were limited, which was recorded but must have had a difficult time transcribing to the modern era. Given a lack of data of our original field, we migrated our attention to Antelope Creek Field, a field that began development in the 1960s and is still being produced today. Some of the more recent wells were developed as recently as 2017. It follows that a well currently being produced and more recently developed would have a relative wealth of data compared to those developed in the 1920s. Our main problems going forward, our challenge moving forward is where and how we acquire all the necessary data to create these simulations. The only information we initially had available to us was the production data of the wells within the well, the location of each well, and the formation types of each well. Much more data is needed to properly get how the simulator sets up and run efficiently. The main data we are missing is the reservoir fluid data, gas, water, and oil saturation, PVT data, and viscosity, rock properties for the formation including porosity, permeability, compressibility, and relative permeability data. The main problem with getting this information is that this type of data is not published and available to the public and instead kept in-house by the companies who figure out in the first place. This is mainly a problem for our reservoir fluid data. Luckily, the main productive zone in our field is the Bakken Formation, and over years the Bakken Formation has had countless studies performed on it, analyzing it in pretty much every way. A lot of our data is going to come from assumptions made using papers that relate to the Bakken Formation. A downside to this is that with every assumption we make or stretch out, our actual results from the project become less and less valid. To try and get legitimate data points, we've reached out to one of the primary operators working in Antelope Creek Field wells called 9 Point Energy. By reaching out to 9 Point Energy, we were able to get in contact with a reservoir engineer who worked to develop Antelope Creek Field. They have been more than happy to provide us with the information we need. There are a few issues we have identified up until this point and are currently looking for solutions to. A large issue will run when we begin simulations, and is that we do not have the data what's going on outside of the Antelope Creek Field. At this point in time, it only appears realistic an option to treat Antelope Field as a closed system. The boundaries of Antelope Creek Field are only lines on a map. There's nothing stopping the fluid from inside the field wells. Treating the field as a closed system will allow us to our field. Another main hurdle we must overcome is dealing with reservoir that is not homogeneous. The Bakken Formation has three parts to it: an impermeable top layer, a permeable middle layer, and an impermeable bottom layer. The top layer and the bottom layer are not an issue, but the middle layer is where all the oil resides. It can't simply be listed as a single permeability throughout the entire layer. Creating an accurate distribution matrix is not easy and very calculation intense. If we were to just assume that the entire reservoir had the same permeability, we would create a massive discrepancy between our simulations and reality. What are we going to do about this? So once we have the proper data points for use in our reservoir simulation, our next challenge will be moving forward and setting up the simulations in the CMG software. Our exposure at LSU to software has been limited up until this point. Next semester, we will be taking a LSU petroleum engineering course on reservoir simulation, and our group will get to learn how to be able to simulate different production methods mentioned throughout this presentation. However, some of the more advanced production methods likely won't be taught within this course. Luckily, that we have some people in our research group that have been able to find that there are many papers and journals submitted up through One Petro dealing with how to properly model these production methods, and we saw that through our literature review. With these resources at our disposal, we hope to be able to properly represent what production in Antelope Creek Field would look like when produced using a variety of methods from here, there, and which is the most viable and productive option. So up until this point, from this point forward, our project management standpoint, given that our project is highly theoretical and does not really require any sort of finances, the object will be is both time efficient and to work well as ethical in our production data and results. Our responsibility as a team to ensure constant checking and balancing and delegation of work throughout the entirety of this project. To create more realistic and useful results, we must be thorough and diligent in our research as well as immersive and realistic in our data production. Unethical data in the beginning of our experimentation could lead to massive errors as at the end of the experiment. So we must be diligent not to cut corners and fabricate data when unnecessary. Further, in a scenario when we'll be presenting this data to professionals and those officials familiar with the production of Bakken formations in Antelope Creek, it is important to present these professionals with realistic and legitimate data. Our goals for next semester. So next semester, much of the work will be done in the group effort. Since our efforts must be done through relatively exclusive software that can only be accessible to those capable and allowed, our efforts must be concentrated, concise, and efficient. Spring 2018 will begin with our establishing fluency in the production simulation software and learning which data to include in our simulations, where to include them, and what and where will be lacking. Once these steps are completed and we are ready to run simulations, we will study different enhanced oil recovery methods and analyze which techniques best serve the Bakken Formation in our Antelope Creek. No reservoir is the same, so our particular formation will be unique in what recovery method works best, how may injection point necessary, and the time requirements needed to complete the enhanced oil recovery, and the formation perimeters relevant to producing hydrocarbons from Antelope Creek.